years. I hope that you can hear me. Reasons, causes, we keep asking where from and why did it come? After all, the natural family is a condition for the survival of society and the state, which ensures the continuity of the nation and humanity. How could such an ideology and practice that negates, denies it, arise and spread globally? Genderism is the Western state religion of the 21st century, based on faith, the rights of all kinds of queer gender identities, the daily liturgy of the media, the fierce demand for faith and fierce persecution of non-believers. State and international institutions take all efforts to legitimize and legally protect this evil religion. Yet the dictatorship against society opened for us the reality of society itself. We saw how obedient, naive, trusting those who blatantly lie to us we can be. And for some reason, we are not surprised to see how cowardly and conciliatory we are, indifferent to the misfortune, trouble or failure of others, and how we tend to blend in with the crowd and not challenge obvious justice. Due to the prevalence of LGBT and genderism ideologies, contrary to common sense and human nature, it is often said that this is a result of the Frankfurt School and the long-standing work of the neo-Marxism in the universities of the Western world. That these are simply the ideas of cultural Marxism developed by liberation philosophers and pseudo-revolutionary practitioners. Yet neither in nature nor in society, coincidences never prevail. Even the greatest global insanities have reasons and express certain interests, and only when useful they receive support, are implemented and established in society. The ideology of LGBT and genderism emerged from the gay bars and became a political practice only because it served the interests of transnational corporations, global financial and political groups. Each century has a central event, the consequences of which are the primary cause of all the subsequent historical events. 19th century, the century of the consequences of the French Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars. 20th century, the era of the collapse of the European empires and the wars of redistribution of global influence caused by the Russian Revolution. The 21st century is clearly becoming the age of globalism, struggle against the liberty of nations and redistribution of the new world. Transnational corporations and banks have spread all over the world. Media controlled by business groups and used in politics on a huge scale, where everything is inextricably linked to political clans and the struggle of groups for spheres of influence. This is a modern form of a new social imperialism. After the end of the gold standard, it became no longer necessary for all services and goods to be purchased with real money. With the introduction of the blank dollar printing standard and ever-increasing universal consumer credit, future incomes could be settled, moving them further and further into the future. Greed to have what you haven't earned has created a hungry civilization of consumers. The economy must grow and grow continuously, without stopping. And any stagnation leads to crisis and collapses. Increasing amounts of goods, services, and the scale of loans ensured ever-increasing predatory profits for corporations and banks. We witnessed growing exclusion. More and more wealth was concentrated in small circle of people. Chained by credits, a formerly free society became more and more dependent on both bank capital and the government. So that's when purely socialist political measures were used to preserve the stability of the system. By redistributing part of the surplus through a never-expanding welfare system, it became possible to temporarily avoid social tensions. The entire generations of lumpens and benefit takers have been raised. They do not even know what it means to work or earn money. To preserve stability of the social security system, mass immigration was attracted, destroying Western cultures and societies. It was impossible to do this without breaking the established traditions and provoking mass resistance of people. Tools were needed to fragment, divide, and control societies. On this path, LGBT and genderist ideology as a tool was a discovery of globalism. Having attracted the extreme leftist theories and practices directed toward the lowest instincts and the rejection of traditions, it was much easier to manipulate people's expectations and rule the societies. Therefore, the major blows to achieve universal control of society were directed toward the foundations of Western culture and civilization that are still capable of organized resistance toward natural family and Christianity. Absolutize real and alleged rights of any social group, no matter how small. Raise the flags of social egoism and despise everything that has been created and is sacred for centuries. Incalculate universal guilt in people, and a mad crowd will wipe out all culture and civilization. History. This started to emerge in Lithuania since the first year of its accession to the EU. By the principle of overtones windows, society was gradually being prepared for the future gender revolution. In 2004, the LGBT Center was established. In 2005, the law on equal opportunities for women and men was replaced by the law on equal opportunities, and the Office for Equal Opportunities for Women and Men was renamed into the Office of Equal Opportunities Ombudsperson. It wasn't just a change of the title. During the first years, public activists, the Association of Tolerant Youth, the New Left, were writing manifests, trying to ridicule traditional family values, organized public campaigns consisting of several individuals. These did not attract much interest from the public. After that, more and more serious forces and finances began to come into play. The financial support of the European Economic Area and the Kingdom of Norway through the programs during 2004-2009 and 2009-2014 was allocated to various non-governmental organizations established to enhance LGBT. The programs covered the so-called hate speech, the empowerment of vulnerable groups, homophobia, tolerance, and the creation of a multicultural society, promotion of equal opportunities, domestic violence, including gender-based violence, the fight against discrimination, and other topics favored by LGBT and gender activists. The Center for Journalism established by Soros, aimed at training the staff for genderism and globalist propaganda, became more popular. Open Lithuania Foundation, established by Soros, Human Rights Monitoring Institute, Diversity Development Group, Lithuanian Jewish Community, Equal Opportunities Development Center, enhanced their activities, as well as Development Center, Mental Health Perspectives, Roma Society Center, Active Citizens Fund, Amnesty International, the International LGBT Organization. So these organizations engaged into the activity which was encouraged by the Nordic Council of Ministers, the European Commission, the Ministries of Finance, Social Security and Labor of Lithuania, etc. So in 5 years, the ground was prepared for the so-called Pride parades, which began in 2010 and were intended to provoke the public and to receive further funding for the so-called activists and the formations they represent. According to the scenario of such pride marches, they were necessarily held in the central streets. Slogans and unconstitutional demands annoying majority of society and used were also possible, in particular exotic sexual orientations, primitive signs of lewd sexuality were often displayed for the public in public places, and even the children watching. Most of all, it was expected to receive a public outcry and a natural emotional response immediately captured and broadcasted to the world by pre-trained pseudo-journalists. Every detail was blown up to infinity and continuously broadcasted as a proof of discrimination of the LGBT community in Lithuania in order to get more finance for victims. And so the time has come for attacks against the main legal obstacle, the Constitution. In the undefined constitutional concept of the family, the lawyers serving LGBT organizations have found a tiny legal space to legitimize their claims. This requires showing marriage between a man and a woman and the natural family as only one of the possible options of the family, and legitimizing partnership as a gender-independent legal form of cohabitation, whose rights and status would be effectively equal to the family. And then only the matters of legal technique would remain to recognize same-sex partnerships as family relations under the pretext of ensuring equal human rights. So the first serious attack took place in 2011, the pretext of which was the family policy concept approved by the Seimas resolution in 2008. The Socdems, led by Julius Sabatauskas and Sysas, submitted a statement to the Constitutional Court saying that only a concept of a family-based marriage is enshrined in the concept. According to the concept, a man and a woman living together but not married, as well as single parents raising children, were not considered family and its members, that is, unmarried men and women with children or adopted children. And the Constitutional Court recognized this concept as unconstitutional. Moreover, two significant provisions emerged in the resolution. According to one of them, the Constitution also, quote, protects and defends families other than those based on marriage, inter alia the joint life of an unmarried man and woman. That inter alia, which means among other things, presupposes a logical question. What is behind the other than, which is not cohabitation of a man and women? In response to this question, the Constitutional Court presented its famous definition. The constitutional concept of family is based on the mutual responsibility, understanding, emotional attachment, help, and similar relationship of family members, and the voluntary decision to assume certain rights and duties that is based on the content of the relationship, and the form of expression of this relationship has no fundamental significance for the constitutional concept of family. It is quite clear from this concept that it is perfect for any cohabitation relationship. According to it, a family could be, for instance, dorm roommates, soldiers or criminals sitting in the same cell who also have mutual responsibility. And what is most important and what need to be proven, this definition is completely suitable for same-sex couples. After this decision of the court, instead of correcting the inconsistency of the family policy concept, it was decided to change the constitution itself, aligning it with the concept, thereby removing the basis of inconsistency. An amendment to Article 38 of the Constitution was urgently proposed, stating that family is created by marriage and also arises from motherhood and fatherhood. And on June 19, 2012, it was adopted, with only one vote missing. Another attempt to adopt the amendment based on the principle no marriage, no family was in 2013. As many as 107 deputies of the Seimas approved it, and that was sufficient for its adoption. Practically all members of the Conservative Party signed this amendment. The same Conservative Party that has now, just a decade later, changed its position to the complete opposite. However, due to the sabotage of the Law and Order Committee headed by Sabatauskas, the acceptance procedure was delayed for almost 3 years. Voting took place only in 2016 and the amendment was not adopted again. 219, when the Constitutional Court opened the door even wider to same-sex families, under another pretext, instead of just resolving the legal dispute as to whether same-sex marriages registered in other countries are mandatory in Lithuania, the concept of family was adjusted again, introducing the statement into the constitutional doctrine, unlike, quote, unlike the constitutional concept of marriage, the constitutional concept of family is, among other things, gender neutral. That's it. The job was done. The legal ground for same-sex marriage was cleared. Through the controlled media, the public was instilled with an imitation of public opinion that is favorable to LGBT aspirations. A large part of society was already used to this, tired of constant propaganda, and adapted to the situation. The Constitutional Court, headed by Dainius Žalimas, who held office illegally for almost a year after the end of his term, would have rejected any laws legalizing protests against genderism. However, this is the only and most important thing the Constitutional Court could not do, to adopt LGBT and gender ideology laws. The long-awaited historical opportunity to do that appeared after the 2020 elections to the parliament. The new Seimas majority in the coalition program provided for everything: the ratification of the Istanbul Convention and the criminalization of hate speech, the legalization of same-sex partners and marriage, and the right to adopt. No one expected the resistance of the society, which was opposed and frightened by the restrictions of the pseudo-pandemic, and it was hoped that everything would be implemented quickly. Yet, our society unexpectedly and spontaneously rose in protest to the Great March for the Defense of Families. Political and economic power of globalism stood behind the authorities, as well as European Commission, the World Economic Forum, and the so-called Lithuanian humility and our weak-willed excellencies. A waking society had nothing but its hands, minds, and hearts. However, their traditions, families, children, and faith, that's what they had. And what has been achieved? None of their projects have been approved so far. Everything is now thrown into a decisive battle. Even a primitive and cynical manipulation of people's feeling, claiming that the one who is for traditional values is for Russia and against Ukraine, although in the constitution of Ukraine since 1996 the prohibition of same-sex marriages is established. It does not allow either homosexual partnerships or LGBT propaganda in schools. Neocolonial ideological blackmail continues. The events and demands organized by the LGBT are regularly joined by ambassadors from other countries. The ideology of genderism is unacceptable to the vast majority of the citizens of the Republic of Lithuania. Therefore, such actions of ambassadors promote negative attitudes towards the values they promote and in countries they represent. According to the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, diplomats must contribute to the development of friendly relations between states, regardless of the diversity of their political and social systems. The demands of LGBT communities in Lithuania are a subject of public debates. The majority of people categorically oppose them, and decisions are exclusively the prerogative of the citizens of our country. According to the international law, diplomatic missions have no right to interfere in the international affairs of states. Yet, a few days ago, 22 foreign ambassadors made an official appeal again, putting pressure on lawmakers and demanding the adoption of the LGBT promoting civil union law. Such actions not only violate Article number 41 of the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, which prohibits diplomats from interfering in the internal affairs of the countries where they reside, but also harm the interests of the Lithuanian states. Resistance to the neo-Marxist gender revolution has started in the Western world, and many issues are no longer considered by the authorities. America has Florida, where genderism has no place, and more states are joining this process. Poland has many municipalities that have declared themselves LGBT-free zones, and even the European Union, which has been blackmailing those municipalities for a long time with restrictions on the allocation of funds, has come to terms with it and cancelled its sanctions. The Lithuanian family movement is also starting the process. We have already begun to submit draft declarations declaring municipalities free from LGBT and gender ideology for the approval of municipal councils through our elected members of municipal councils. Every normal person has two questions. The first, why are they, the globalists, in such a hurry, both in Lithuania and throughout Europe? The answer is simple. Because the favorable conditions created for the final establishment of the dictatorship of genderism are temporary. The ruling coalition in Lithuania is already beginning to fall apart. In Europe, after the Italian elections, the threshold of 4 states with 35% of the population of the European Union needed by the blocking minority of the European Parliament has become critical close. Another similar elections in any major EU country could be decisive, and the very possibility of civilizational annihilation decision-making in Brussels would be liquidated. That's why it is in a hurry. Both the UN and EU projects and directives are being feverishly pushed, providing for the forced legitimization of globalist processes. Another arising question, what will happen? There is no one in the world except the God who could answer this question. One thing is clear, we are only at the very beginning of the process. The plates of global influences have started to move. The redistribution of world powers has begun, and neither nations nor people will be spared there. But it is equally clear that in this process, globalism has exhausted itself and is losing. There is even a tiny chance that the centers of global power may see a future of civilizational cultural defeat and abandon this long-term useless project. In the second case, when the inevitable critical moment emerges, direct and primitive dictatorship would need to be chosen. Then the words of Frank Zappa would be fulfilled. The illusion of freedom will last as long as it is profitable to continue the illusion. Then, when the illusion becomes too expensive, they will simply collect the scenery, pull back the curtains, take out the tables and chairs, and you will see nothing but bricks on the back wall of the theater. The movement of Lithuanian families published the declaration Lithuania First. It states that existence of the state is no longer possible without fundamental reforms restoring direct democracy. This requires to temporarily forget the interests of individual social groups and mobilize all progressive forces and leaders of society, parties, communities, associations, and congregations for one common goal. And I believe that the future of Europe also depends on rising to such action. The Conference of Conservative Political Actions, which brings together the right-wing forces of European states and societies, the establishment of the Anti-Davos Alliance, initiated by Jordan Peterson in London, the increasing number of anti-globalist organizations and their closer cooperation give hope that this action has already begun. But something else is happening. We are no longer surprised to see again and again, every day, so many slaves among us. Slaves who still love their chains. We just have to do what we have to do. Each generation, each nation and state has its own Thermopyles. Sparta and Athens, our children and the future of our homelands are behind us. Freedom is not a gift or grace, and no one gives it for nothing. Democratic societies have as much as they can take. Let's take it. I still believe it is possible.
Ačiū